What's going on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Kamen Rider build. Unfortunately, this episode and also my Sentai episode for episode 40, actually I made them all and I was going to render them out and post them online, my reviews, and suddenly the whole thing, without realizing it, because like it wasn't rendering properly, I by accident clicked the button and both of them got deleted, so I didn't have the chance to actually render them out. So I'm having to remake these videos now, and the quality, what I've said in them, is a little different. I don't remember as much as I did when I actually watched them, and I'm not going to really go back and watch both of these over again because it takes way too much time, and I was hoping that I would get these out much sooner than I did, and unfortunately today has been a really crazy wild day and it really has bothered me like mad, but I wanted to put these out at a decent pace. So this is for Kamen Rider Build episode 13. I just want to give you guys that heads up that this video won't be as good. It will be good, but it's not going to be as detailed as it was in my original cut of it, which unfortunately you won't be able to see, but I'm just saying this right now that the original cut of it was a better cut, and that's about it for me. So anyway, this episode basically focuses on answering the one huge question we've been wondering for quite some time: who is under the veil, and by that I mean who is under Bloodstark's veil. So basically what happens is that during this episode we have it where we end up finding out in the previous episode, and this is something I forgot to mention, is that Navashima last episode mentioned that he got back his memory. He knows who framed Ryoga. So Navashima mentions to Sento who it is. Thing is that when Sento hears this, he ends up hiding away and disappearing and trying to figure out things. At the same time, the others don't understand why it is. There's a whole reason to it. It's very important. We'll learn that later. But anyway, following all this, we also have it where Gintaku speaks to Namba about the Totoro Institute and gaining the rights to the rider system and working together. Thing is that Namba doesn't want to work with him anymore. He wants to work with a new partner, and he's not told who it is specifically, but we do find out shortly after. Now the thing is that following this, the people on the Kamen Rider base end up using horse mackerel to draw out Sento. Sento does come out and he mentions that Navashima told him everything, and yeah, he doesn't tell him he doesn't tell them who is Bloodstark. They just say that Bloodstark was the one that did it, so they think immediately it's Katsuragi. That's at least what they're to believe and what we're to believe initially. But at the same time, they want to prove certain things, so they have to go and look into it more. So then, following all of this, what ends up happening is that Gintaku and Bloodstark confront each other at one point in the woods. They get into a fight, and it turns out that Bloodstark is the new partner for Namba. We also learned that apparently the Trans-Stream system, which is the system that Bloodstark and Night Rogue use, is only limited by a certain amount of strength for a hazard level, as opposed to the rider system, which constantly evolves, meaning that the rider system can continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, but the Trans-Stream system has a limitation to how strong it can get. Does that mean that the Trans-Stream system is weak? No, but it means that it only stays a certain strength. But what is explained is that your experience with the system is the differentiator. So if you have greater experience in combat and everything, your strength with the Trans-Stream system might be greater than your opponent's strength if their experience with it is much weaker or much less. So that's something that's kind of hinted at and explained a bunch. So that's something. Additionally, following all this, after they fight for a while, eventually Gintaku does confront Sento about finding out more information about the Namba Industry Institute and about how supposedly they have access to the Pandora's box and that he should go to the storage system. What they do discuss then is that maybe figuring out the password from Sawa. So they do figure that out, and before they go off on their mission, Sento speaks quietly to Mizora about purifying the last bottle that he had, which is the 20th bottle, which was made from Sawa when she was a Smash Monster. Now he doesn't want anyone else to know about this other than Mizora, and he tells her that specifically. Mizora is not very comfortable with this, but she understands that he must have a reason for that. So anyway, following all this, what ends up happening is that is done with, and eventually what happens is that Sento and Ryoga go off to where this place is, and they each transform next to each other. So we see both Ryoga and Sento transform. Sento first, then Ryoga, and then what happens is that Ryoga turns into Kamen Rider Cross C, while Sento doesn't transform into a rabbit tank. He actually goes into Kaizakurashi, his most recent form, and they end up storming the front of the building. As they go through it, eventually they come to a keypad. There, what happens is that they put in a combination which initially doesn't work, but then at one point the door opens up and they think that it's just a random thing that suddenly opens and it works. But the reason why it's there is because someone has been watching them and suspected them to come there. Who specifically? Well, it was Bloodstark. Bloodstark was the one that was actually waiting for them this whole time. So what happens is that Bloodstark ends up getting into a fight with them, basically explaining how, the password that you were given is something that was wrong. Your informant probably doesn't understand that for every couple hours they tend to change the passwords regularly so that you can't just go by one password. So that's something that's very important. But eventually, Sento does fight alongside Ryoga against Bloodstark, and at certain points they each use their own abilities. At one point, Sento goes from Kaizakurashi to Hawk Gatling, and then he goes from Hawk Gatling to Nin Comics. And then Sento uses the new best match that he has, which is the Octopus Light, which is the combination of those two bottles. The Octopus is the one that he already had, but the Light bottle is the one that he purified from Sawa. The reason why I know this is because during the episode when we end up seeing Sento pouting about what he finds out regarding who is Bloodstark, we see him holding this bottle, which, if you look at it, that's supposed to be the Octopus bottle, telling you that the other bottle must be the Light bottle, most likely. Or, well, yeah, it has to be that one, because the one that she has to purify has the dark elemental energy on the bottle, which is the form that we tend to see them when they're not purified yet, the bottles. So anyway, what ends up happening is that all that is done, and then at one point what do you call it? Since no one saw the bottle being made or how it works or whatever, only Mizora knows about the bottle and the best match. So when Bloodstark fights, he doesn't know what to expect, and so he's caught off guard by the bottle. And that's important because of something we learn later. But the point is that this new form allows him to do attacks where he can, flash the light and then suddenly go out with his tentacles and grab the opponent and throw them. And basically blinding them and then tossing them when they're caught off guard. Now, it's a really cool ability, it's a great ability, and that is currently one of the newest best matches, as we know. So, additionally, following all this, they do end up defeating Bloodstark, and at that point, Bloodstark says, we've uncovered what we need to know, and at the same time, Sento uncovers what he needs to know, which we find that out later. So, eventually, what happens is that Sento and Ryoga take back the Pandora box and bring it back to the base. Back at the base, what happens is that Sento and Ryoga and everyone order a very nice feast for dinner, so everyone's eating that. Eventually, Suichi comes in and is amazed by all the food and everything, and he asks, where did you get all this, and how are you able to afford this? And they basically say that they use the money from the register to pay for it. Also, Suichi is surprised when he sees the Pandora box sitting on the table. So, following all this, they enjoy the meal, and then everyone falls asleep, at least that's what's thought of. But suddenly, this mysterious figure shows up. He starts grabbing all Sento's bottles, and even the Pandora's box, and he begins to make his way towards the exit of the cafe. Thing is that who is waiting at the top of the cafe? Sento. Sento is waiting for whoever it is, and that person is Shuichi. What we end up learning is that Sento ended up speaking to Nabeshima. Nabeshima mentioned that Bloodstalker was the one that had called for him to frame Ryoga, but the thing is that Bloodstalker's identity, which Nabeshima knew, was Shuichi, the astronaut. So that's something that's very important. So following all this, what ends up happening is that Shuichi says, how do you know that he wasn't just lying to you? And what he explains is that I made sure that when I spoke to Mizora about purifying the bottle, that I wouldn't tell anyone about purifying the bottle so that I can do the new Octopus Light. And when I use the Octopus Light best match, Bloodstark seemed caught off guard immediately, which told me right away that that Nabeshima's thought was correct. That he wasn't lying. He was completely 100% telling the truth. And at that point, Shuichi runs off and disappears with it, and disappears with the Pandora's box and the bottles. So at that point, what happens is that the preview clip for the next episode appears. What we do see in the preview clip is a couple of things. For starters, we do see for a fact that Shuichi does use the Transstream gun in the next episode, and we also see that Sento's getting a new Henshin bottle-shaped device, which will be an attachment to the build driver, similar to the attachment that Ryoga has, except rather than it being a dragon, it looks like a can of soda or something. It's kind of different, but with eyes on it. And the thing is that this attachment allows him to access Rabbit Tank Sparkling, which is basically his powered up mode, because typically during most seasons of Kamen Rider, they have a point where fairly early on, they'll introduce a power up mode, which will be the first initial power up, not the final mode, but just the initial power up mode that will become the standard that they'll use for quite a long time before eventually they move on to the next power up mode or whatever. But yeah, this will become the pretty consistent standard overall that he'll make pretty common use of throughout the show. So that's cool, and that's basically where the preview clip ends. As a whole, this looks good. I did enjoy this episode a lot. It was predictable in some senses because they kind of kept on hinting at things, because there were several moments throughout the episode where they, kept on having Shuichi come in after everyone had done things. Not to mention the other thing is that they came back to the base early and they were greeted by Mizora. I forgot to also mention the fact that during the episode we do see a flashback going back to Sento when he first gained the build driver and using the Rabbit Tank mode for the first time, and how that was for him, and his sudden reaction to seeing all the numbers and the calculations that he typically sees regularly, seeing all that here and being surprised by it. That was something. Also, just seeing him from a weaker state was just kind of different. As a whole, pretty good episode. Could have been better in some places as far as being predictable. I was not very happy with that because it was just sort of constant hinting at it's Shuichi, it's Shuichi, it's Shuichi, it's Shuichi. But I'm not going to complain either way. I thought there were still good things about it. I just think that it could have been done a little bit better so that it was more suspenseful, because they've been pretty good at being more suspenseful throughout the series so far. This was one of those episodes where it was sort of okay, let's just admit it. Let's just be out there and obvious. Now, the other question I just wanted to say also is that I also wonder, because I honestly don't know for a fact, is who is Katsuragi. Now, one thought I thought of is possibly that it is Sento. I don't know if that's 100% fact, but it definitely could be, because he does have amnesia, and for all we know, he might actually be Katsuragi. Could be someone else we haven't met yet, but I feel like it's a possibility. We'll have to wait and see, though. I don't know anything for a fact, so please remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.